Quick question. If you look at the last 90 days of revenue, what percentage actually came from referrals? And if you don't know that number, it means that your business is at a bigger revenue risk than you realize. Most service business owners feel stable because they're busy, but being busy can actually hide revenue volatility. In our last video defining what referral dependency is, I spoke that referral dependency actually creates revenue risk for service businesses. I also went through the 5 factors that actually determine that risk. Number 1 is a concentration risk, meaning what percentage of revenue and clients are actually tied to referrals. Number 2 is a lag risk, meaning if you lost a client today, how long would it actually take you to replace that client? Number 3 is a single point of failure, meaning how many pipeline sources do you actually have outside of revenue? Number 4 is a conversion strength risk, meaning how many referrals or how many leads that come into your pipeline are you able to convert? And number 5 is a growth cap risk, meaning what's the likelihood that you're able to scale depending on how referral dependent your business actually is. So in this video, I'm going to go through the concentration risk. Now, as I just mentioned, concentration risk is what percentage of your clients and revenue is actually tied to referrals. The higher the percentage, the more your business relies on something that you don't control, which is what creates the risk in the first place. So for example, last year I had a sales conversation with a business owner in the manufacturing space. They were actually looking to bring us in because they're about to lose a major client that accounted for 30% of their revenue. Now, this is a client that they actually got through a recommendation and not necessarily because they had actually created demand to attract and close that particular client. So they basically wanted to develop a strategy that could help them replace that current client that they were about to lose. So let me put this into perspective so you actually understand. So they're doing roughly about $62.5K in monthly revenue, which works out to about $750,000 in annual revenue. A 30% loss would mean that they'll be losing $225,000 annually. Now, that's a significant hit to their operating expenses because now they're going to have to find a way to actually recover from that revenue loss by losing that particular client. So that's what I mean when I say concentration risk. It's when majority of your revenue is actually tied to 1 or 2 referrals or clients that you actually have. And then replacing them is harder because you don't have the client acquisition system in place that you control that you can actually use to ramp up incoming demand and capture demand whenever you want to or whenever you need to. So now that we understand the gravity of concentration risk, let's actually do a quick exercise on how we can actually score that risk. So there are actually 2 numbers that you're going to need for this. The first is the percentage of revenue that actually comes from referrals, and the second is the percentage of clients that actually come from referrals. So looking at your client list and revenue over the past 12 months, you want to use this specific criteria to actually score yourself. So let's start with revenue from referrals. Now, if less than 20% of your revenue actually came from referrals, then that's a 0. If between 20% and 35% came from referrals, then that's a 1. If between 36% and 50% came from referrals, that's a 2. If between 51% and 65% came from referrals, that's a 3. If between 66% and 80% came from referrals, that's a 4. And if more than 80% of your revenue came from referrals, that's a 5. So now let's do the same for the percentage of clients that actually came from referrals. Using the same scoring system, less than 20%, that's a 0. If it's between 20% and 35%, then that's a 1. Between 36% and 50%, that's a 2. Between 51% and 65%, that's a 3. Between 66% and 80%, that's a 4. And again, more than 50%, that's a 5. So now what you're going to do is to take both scores that you got from 0 to 5 and you're going to add them together. If your total is between 0 to 1, that's a A. Give yourself a round of applause. That's excellent. That's very good. Between 2 to 3, that's a B, which is also good, but there's still some room for improvement. Between 4 and 5, that's a C, but there's still a potential risk that exists in your business. Between 6 to 7, that's a D, and you're referral dependent, which is a huge risk to your business right now. Between 8 to 10, that's an F. It means that you're critical and you need to fix that right now. So you probably should reach out to us to do that. So for example, the same business owner that I mentioned earlier in the manufacturing space, the percentage of clients that actually comes from referrals for that particular company is 60%. But the percentage of revenue that actually comes from referrals is 90%. So their score would be a 3 in terms of clients that come from referrals and actually a 5 in terms of revenue that comes from referrals, making their total score an 8, which is an F. So you can have a relatively average number of clients tied to referrals, but if the majority of your revenue is still tied to referrals, then that's where the real risk and danger is in your business. Because it means that your revenue is concentrated. So if 1 or 2 major clients actually left, then it's going to be very difficult for you to recoup or recover that particular revenue loss. Okay, so that's it for concentration risk. Remember, even if your concentration is low, there's another risk that decides whether your pipeline can survive or not if a client leaves and how long you actually take to replace them. That's called your lag risk, and in the next video, that's what we're going to score. So click here to watch it, and I'll see you in the next video.